Welcome everybody. This is the KubeVirt Community Meeting, December 16th, 2020. First topic on the agenda is Ryan Hollisey has more to follow up on the Save and Restore proposal.
Hey everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so one more topic. So I'll do a little bit of review of some changes I made from last time around the API side of things to kind of close the book on that discussion. And then lastly, the last topic at least I have for now is the storing RAM in PVCs. Okay, so last time we talked a little bit about the API. I tried to summarize it a little bit in this table and wanted to, as a way to kind of communicate where I think things are. So kind of the high level look at this. So offline virtual machine snapshot. I characterize this to be like stage one, which was Michael Hendricks' work. So being able to snapshot a virtual machine, and then I call stage 2 and 3, which is kind of what's in this proposal. I describe that as online VM snapshot and offline VMI snapshot. So being snapshots of the VM that has a VMI and then snapshots of the VMI. And then a fourth potential stage here, which would be like something I'm not proposing here, but something we could do, which is having a snapshot of a running VMI by itself and that VMI being running after. So that's kind of the summary of like what I took away from last time. But if folks, are there any comments on that? Like the folks kind of see it that way too, or?
What would be an offline VMI snapshot?
So it would be a snapshot of a virtual machine instance that does not have a VM object, and the virtual machine instance wouldn't be running after you do the snapshot.
Let's see.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of how that would. I mean, I guess so. The case would be a virtual machine instance that shut itself down, so the object itself didn't get deleted. That might be pretty narrow. I mean, maybe it's useful.
Yeah, so it would be that when you do the save operation, so it's basically similar to I'd say it's the same path as online VM snapshot. But in both these cases, what I'm saying is that at the conclusion of it, the virtual machine object no longer exists. It is shut down. That's what these two share in common. Okay. Are there any other questions kind of about that? I know like some of the terms on this, like a little tough, like online and offline are a little weird when you kind of talk about VMI as opposed to when you talk about VM, but at least that's how I'm trying to communicate it for now. Can always change that. All right, let's go to the topic I do want to cover. So I tried to put together a few tables for each of these subjects, or rather for each of these options for storing RAM. So just kind of the high level here. We're storing VMI RAM. How's it going to get stored? We ends up in a PVC somewhere. So how does that PVC get there? You know, what's managing it, and so on and so forth. I put together 3 options here, and then those corresponding tables for pros and cons for each of them. So the first one, I'll just list them all. Use the already attached storage. So like the virtual machine instance has a PVC attached to it. That's maybe how it got its disk presented to it. Use that PVC to store its RAM. Since the assumption is that the disk is already going to, like I said, disk is starting to be there. I'll just add the RAM to it alongside of it. Second, using a dynamic provisioner to create a new PVC. So in this case, something would have to call out and say, create a new PVC and and then the RAM would have to end up in that location. This would have to be something sort of like maybe the Virt launcher, or could be maybe even the Snapshot controller could do it. I'm not sure exactly, but sort of depending on something to provision it kind of during the operation. And the third one being use a large PVC that's already been attached to the Virt handler to save VMRAM. So I have pros and cons for each of these. I don't know if some of them are, I don't know, it's hard to find some of the to fill out for each, but here's some of the ideas. So like using array attached storage, one of the things I thought was really nice is that it's actually a pretty good way to group this as part of cloning. Like if you do cloning later on, we're gonna have disk and RAM there, that'd be nice. I say no upfront costs because the assumption is the disk is already attached as part of the PVC. So we're not adding anything, we're just using what's there. This was a comment I added, Roman made a comment about this. I don't know if you want to explain further on it, but one of the cons I put as file-based PVCs only as a con. I don't know if is Roman here?
I'm here, but I have nothing to add right now.
Okay. Another con, no guaranteed space. So, I mean, this could be full. So what do you do if you save and this full? Well, you can't really save then, or it fails. I don't know, some other options. I mean, you could make the volumes expand. So it's not necessary that it's not necessarily like that this is impossible to overcome, but there is something to think about. Are any thoughts about first one, or even in general? I don't know. I'm trying to get some feedback on these three.
So how would the dynamic PVC allocation work?
Okay.
How would you maybe go over your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So what I'm thinking is that when the save operation comes in, so we go through the snapshot API, we perform the snapshot. Essentially, the save is being happening under the hood on the VMI. So at some point, before that save can occur, there needs to be a create request for a new PVC. I'm not quite sure what would do that yet. It could be for handler that does it, or it could be maybe the snapshot controller. The two things that I was kind of between as options that go out and get that PVC. The snapshot controller was interesting because I think it does that already. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong about that. And then we'd end up with a PVC. We would let the Virt launcher know where to store it, and then it would land the RAM inside of that PVC.
Huh?
How would you get the PVC in the environment, the pod's environment?
Okay. So could do the hot disk plug. They're gonna hot plug the disk. I think I saw that. This is something that I got kind of from this idea here for using disk hot plug. I'm not familiar with it, but that's what I think you'd have to do.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, you could probably reuse some of the stuff Alexander has done with the hot plug. I guess the difference here would be that you wouldn't actually want to attach that storage or anything to the virtual machine guest. So it would use all the same logic up to a certain point, and then it would stop. I think that's achievable.
Okay. What do you think about, what do you think about in relationship to the other options? Like, what do you think, like, what do you like about dynamic PVC? What's maybe of interest to you?
I think that one's the one that's going to give us the most consistent results. Using already attached storage is kind of use case dependent, whether there's going to actually be room on the already attached storage, and you have to also figure out, which, there's multiple storage volumes, like where do you put the RAM? Like which one does it belong on? So coupling those two things can be difficult to separate afterwards. I like the fact that with the dynamic provisioning, you're separated the RAM from the disks as well.
Okay.
I think that's the way I would go. I would use dynamic. It's just going to be a little, I mean, it's achievable, I think. I think that it's a little tedious, but that's probably the way I would go.
So what do you think, like you mentioned, so separating the RAM from the disk, where do you think that's good, or how come you mentioned that? I'm just curious.
I guess I was thinking about the case of if you ever had a online snapshot that you wanted to turn into something, if you ever wanted to start a clean virtual machine from that disk or something. I'm not sure if any of that makes sense. I just am hesitant to bundle both the disk and the RAM on the same storage. And maybe that's not even going to be a problem. It's just something that I'd have to think through a little bit more. I'd have to think about the use cases end to end to understand if there's ever a situation where we would actually need to separate those things.
Okay. I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, I think dynamic PVC makes a lot of sense. I think we just, need to find a way to configure what storage class do we allocate this thing on, and are there any rules about that, or what's the best way to configure that. Taking a step back though, like I think for a lot of cases, or at least what I've heard from some overt people, is that for a lot of cases doing these memory dumps aren't particularly helpful. So I just want to make sure that our API is like, this is an optional thing for the snapshot.
So you're saying the RAM being optional?
Yes.
Okay. That's fine. If it's a flag or something that, we don't want to do that operation. I can understand.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that it's basically, that's a flag, and for the VMI stuff, the online versus offline VMI, that can be a flag too.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking as well. What about, okay, I'll make those comments afterwards. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so let's see. How about the last option? I mean, I just had one con here, and I don't know, this might just sink this ship right here. I mean, I think Roman was the one who mentioned this, and I do concur that, like, say VM RAM will be readable by anyone with access to this PVC. Probably not something we want. So I don't know. Does anyone have any other opinions on this, on the third option?
Unless you could, we'd have to securely store hashes or information about, the memory somewhere else to make sure that it's, I guess, not been tampered with or something, if that's the concern.
Yeah.
I think this was more like, oh yeah, I mean, it's just everyone can read it when it's on one common PVC, right? I mean, you would have to do, or Rectangle would have to do special preparations to map it to namespaces itself. That's what I meant here.
We'll probably have to do all that checksum stuff anyway.
Yeah, sure. But it's really more about they can read it, less about tampering with it.
Okay.
From stored memory, you can read out a lot of interesting stuff.
Yes, that's good to know. Yeah, and I think I wonder what other systems do, if they have options to encrypt it or what. But then we get in the whole key management problem, which is,
I just find it would just fit nice into the Kubernetes permission level if the PVC would be in the namespace where the VM is, right?
Agree.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think, one or two. I mean, I do like that, kind of what you said about we can it would be a little more reliable having the dynamic PVC allocation. That I had mentioned here that we could extend volumes as well. I mean, I kind of stole that from your comment, Michael. Like, what does like this look like if we were to extend volumes?
Well, I guess you'd have to somehow calculate how much additional space you need, and the problem there is Kubernetes doesn't give a good way to introspect the capabilities of a provisioner. So, we'd have to have the administrator be like, yes, you can definitely extend this. It's not something that we can just try to do because it may not work a lot of the time. But you just edit the PVC definition and you get a bigger PVC.
Okay. So, I mean, does that end up making these pretty similar then if we can edit the PVC definition? I mean, it just means that now.
Well, no, because if you're using a shared PVC, then it's a little more complicated. I think you just have to find a way of cataloging everything and storing it in some format that, can be readable. If a dump just goes to a file in memory, that's simpler.
Okay.
Are we still planning to restore those workloads?
Sorry? Can you
I'm
say it
asking
again?
if we are still planning to restore these workloads, or are we just saving?
Yes, the idea would be able to restore these.
So I'm just wondering how this PVC that we attach to dynamically will get to the place that we want to restore the VMS.
I'm having a hard time with your mic, Athletic. It was something about restoring.
I'm sorry. Let's do some other time.
I believe that what Badik was asking is how do you plan to get the safe store, the state to the place where you plan to restore the VMI?
So I suspect that once the memory is stored in a PVC, it's not ever going to be touched again. So if we want to restore from there, we'll probably, we could use CDI cloning or something that would basically copy it either via a snapshot or just dumb copy to another PVC that will be mounted at some point. But yeah, and then eventually QEMU obviously has to be configured to read that memory when it starts up. So maybe we'll, that PVC will be mounted the first time the VM started, and then maybe not anymore, and then it can be deleted. But yeah, there will be some bookkeeping there. But I do imagine that, once memory's been dumped somewhere, we're not going to, start up a new VM with that PVC. We'll create a copy in some way.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well, because you may want to do this multiple times. Like you have that same snapshot, you want to restore it 5 times for whatever reason. So yeah, like having the ability to copy it and to do that also gives you the ability to maybe make it a little more mobile as well. So yeah, I agree, Michael. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I think so. That's mainly what I wanted to cover. I mean, I think, yeah, I think so. I guess let's see if I can kind of put this into kind of summarize this. So it sounds like dynamic PVC. We'll get the advantage of being able to rely on there being, or we'll be able to rely on guaranteed space being available, assuming that we can get it from the provisioner. yeah, and then while attached storage seems like it could work, it's really, I guess it depends on how we want to allow for those volumes to be expanded. I guess, could there be a possibility that both like attached and dynamic could be an option? Because like one of the things I mentioned here is like requires a dynamic permissioner. I don't know what like how how folks out there, like if everyone's using a dynamic permissioner and it's just something that people does, and this is maybe not a con at all. Like, is this realistic? Like,
I think it's unusual to not be using a dynamic provisioner nowadays.
Okay, I mean, I think in that case, then, if we can assume that there's someone who's using a dynamic permissioner, it seems reasonable to me that dynamic PVC would be the way to go, as long as I mean, as long as the bookkeeping, I guess maybe could be the challenge in it, but I don't think it's too. I don't think it'll get too out of hand. I think it'll. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. So what if folks? So I think dynamic allocation seems like the way to go. Is there any dissenting opinions on that? Like, should I do both? Like, should we look at doing ARIA attached storage as well as dynamic PVC allocation, or start with dynamic PVC allocation maybe?
If you start with already attached storage, I think you should look into a way of representing that a volume is being attached to a VMI for the purposes of Snapshot. So
okay,
not necessarily coupling a disk image with the RAM, but just having a reserved PVC that's attached to the VMI in the event that you are going to Snapshot. I don't know. That'd be mine. Maybe other people have thoughts. That's how I would approach it.
I agree. Question. I don't know much about how QEMU implements the memory dumps, but is there a way to do it? Can you do like a memory dump delta? So like first time you do a full dump, and then other times it's like a diff. Probably not, because that would make a good use case for using it like a single shared disk. If you could somehow store deltas, but I assume it doesn't do that. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Okay, I like what you said, David. Yeah, I think, yeah, that would be a good assumption with ARIA attached storage. Yeah, if you do make if you sort of make that, if you have that expectation that this isn't just going to be used for disk. Yeah. Okay, so I think both these could work. I think it's guess what it comes down to here. What would be easier to like start with? I don't know. I mean, to me, it seems like I like the idea of like having the ability to do both of these. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the work like what a good one to start with. Maybe ARIA attached storage seems to be a good one to start with. I don't know. Do folks disagree? Should I not go that route? Should I start with dynamic? Like given what David mentioned.
Yeah, David, how easy would it be to bootstrap the hot plug code into? Because it seems like maybe it would just be easier to do the already attached, but
I'm trying to think of how the API would look for that. That's the hard part. So the API couples for hot plug. If you want to hot plug a disk to VMI, you have to go through a sub resource, and that sub resource is very strict. It requires a volume and a disk to be coupled together, and it always expects those two things to exist together. So there would be some API work that would have to be done to enable something like this. I'd have to think about it. I don't, it's not, the mechanics are all there, how to actually do it and expose that. Maybe we wouldn't even have to go to that separate resource endpoint because it's all of our control. Well, so would we be assuming that the snapshot controller is dynamically creating the PVC?
That's the way I think that I like that the most right now. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, Michael, what do you think of that? Because I mean, that was my understanding, is that it has that, or it does that already, or has that ability. Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it creates snapshots now. So I think in the dynamic allocation case, yeah, it would create the PVC.
Okay.
Okay, so we could bypass the sub-resource endpoint entirely, and we could have this something that's pretty much entirely encapsulated into the VMI status or something like that. The idea of a RAM disk being hot plugged. Not a RAM disk, but a PVC that's meant to hold a RAM snapshot. This isn't trivial. That's my conclusion, just trying to think through it. I mean, it's all the technical bits are there of how to actually get PVC exposed into the VMI pod where you can do this thing. It's all the wiring of how to do that in a way that's different than how hot plug is meant to actually attach a disk to the VMI. We'd have to come up with some kind of different mechanisms to represent a volume that's meant to be used for a different purpose than a disk. That's where it gets complicated.
Okay, so.
And for the already attached case, we basically just would have a new type of volume that can reference maybe that will just mount a PVC when the VM is started, and we can come up with our own, like, has to be a file-based PVC, of course, and just come up with our own directory structure for dumping images on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think, okay, so let me try to kind of summarize. So this is, I'll add some more comments based on the discussion here. So like the dynamic PVC sounds like this, we could do it. It sounds like, given the amount of things, maybe the moving parts in this, with that, if there comes a time when there's another use case, we should add this as well. But I think maybe like giving some more time to, I guess, some of the pieces to maybe, I guess, mature. I don't know if that would be the right word, but just give it some more time for some of the pieces to expand a little bit. And then this can come into play later, if there's a need. So maybe starting with already attached storage with the assumption that the volume being mounted can be used for something other than disk. And then, like you said, Michael, having some sort of directory structure there that respects that.
Yeah, the thing I just thought is going to be kind of annoying. It's like, so you're deleting a snapshot. Well, then somehow that virt launcher is going to have to know to like delete a file on a PVC somewhere.
Okay.
Just cleaning up after,
Actually, does the virt launcher have access at that level? I don't think it does.
Someone's going to have to.
Virt handler could, but virt launcher is deliberately unprivileged.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, correct. Yep.
Sorry, language has meaning.
Yep. Someone somewhere is basically going to have to be watching for when, snapshots are deleted to clean up. It doesn't have to be like immediate thing, but maybe eventually we can, we have to clean up the old snapshots.
Okay, so that would be so what you're saying is like if I have a snapshot. Well, actually, can you go through an example?
So you have your VM. It's running and has this PVC that has memory dumps on it.
Yeah.
That are mapped to snapshots somewhere, and then you want to delete a snapshot because say maybe you're running out of space in that PVC and you've got some old ones that you want to free up. or just some ones that you want to free up some space on that disk to do more snapshots. Maybe you have some policy or something. So you're going to delete a snapshot, which I think the user would assume that that is deleting that memory dump on disk and just the orchestration of doing that. So obviously the user is going to make an API request, and that has to somehow work its way to that pod with the PVC mounted and deleting a file.
So that's not exactly how I thought it would work. I thought that this RAM PVC would have a one-to-one relationship with a snapshot. Like there would only ever be one RAM snapshot on that PVC, and then it would be cloned, and then you'd have two PVCs. So you wouldn't have to necessarily bookkeep the previous one. And then if you'd snapshot again, what would it do? I guess it would just overwrite the previous snapshot on the one that's actually attached to that pod, and then the clone operation would happen again on that after it's been overwritten. Is that not more aligned with how snapshots work today, where we would always clone the PVC?
So so that would mean that, okay, so then this is just, the PVC is just kind of a dumping ground. And then we eventually copy, or we could snapshot that actually.
Right. That was kind of my thought process. That's just the same thing like a disk PVC that's attached to that virtual machine instance.
That's interesting. I didn't think of it like that. That's
I wouldn't treat it any different than I would a disk, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, if we can basically do that and map it to a snapshot, that would probably be the most efficient way to do things.
It's just another volume, I guess.
Yeah, it's just a scratch volume for, okay.
Essentially, yeah.
Yep. That's cool.
So I'm trying to understand. That would be like, so every time you do the example that you gave, David, let's say every time you do a snapshot, maybe some time goes by, you do another snapshot. You mentioned that that say the RAM has changed, and the expectation would be then now that the new snapshot, the next snapshot that you did would overwrite the old snapshot objects, right? So they wouldn't create a new one.
No,
there would be a new one. So what you say, so time zero, you dump the memory, there's nothing on the disk, then you snap it, and you associate that snapshot with the VM snapshot or VMI snapshot.
Okay.
Then, you do another one that disk is overwritten again with memory. You take another snapshot that becomes associated with that VM snapshot. Then when you want to delete something, you just delete that the snapshot resource.
Okay. So
when you want to restore, you create a PVC from that snapshot.
Right. Okay. So would that mean, is it what you mean by like treating it like a disk, like essentially?
Yeah, it's basically just a scratch space, and we'll create snapshots from that. Yeah,
and then when you want to, this is, you just hold it, and then if you want to do anything with it, you're cloning it, right?
If you want to do anything, you're creating a PVC from a snapshot.
And then what you were saying earlier, Michael, with the cleanup, when you delete the snapshot, you don't expect that the clone PVC is deleted, or do you? What was that? I want to see if I can.
Yeah, so I think when you delete the VM snapshot, this is another thing that is optional. Like even in the current API, I think you can keep the Kubernetes snapshots around, but I would think people would want to clean that stuff up. So
That's
So-
handled with, sorry, I think I cut you off, but that's handled with owner references. So it's just the whole cascade delete or not. Yeah, so
Right.
you would have a
Well,
snapshot
but-
option, and then if you did cascade delete, it would delete everything.
But would the cloned object be, so you're saying the cloned object would be owned by the snapshot?
Right.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I don't really have a counter. I'm just trying to think about it because, yeah, I mean, because I guess that's our source of truth, right? Like, it's like, if you have the snapshot, everything that comes from it, like there should, nothing, if that snapshot doesn't exist, right, there shouldn't be just a bunch of lying around PVC clones. I mean, what would be the point of that? I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let me just calculate. Sorry, go ahead. I think it's fine.
Yeah, sorry for coming back to this over and over again. I'm just trying to understand. I mean, the original use case is, from what I remember, was that we will do a snapshot and then the user will be able to send all of that to forensic analysis, and then I don't know what. I mean, and
Mhm.
I'm just not sure where are we going with all of this.
So the idea would be that after the snapshot's been created, we can use cloning to create a copy of that that VM and then restore it in another location to do the forensics. So like another namespace, for example. Does that answer your question?
I mean, I don't see how this will work. I mean, on another system or on another cluster.
Oh, so I added I talked about this a little bit last time. I think when I created a non-goal for this, Vladik, because like I call this import export. Like I think that's probably the best way to, easiest way to do is to kind of separate it out. So the idea would be to keep it in the cluster. So import export is what I call taking it outside. So the idea would that it would end up staying in the cluster, and then if we wanted to do import export, maybe that I'd be something that we could do separately from like on and as an extension of this, but that's something I want to do here.
Okay,
Does that
but
make sense?
then I don't understand how does it solve the original problem? Like how would anyone debug it or restore it for analysis? Or I mean,
I don't quite understand. So like the idea would be that the some other user would come along, it would store the VM state, and when whatever namespace they have, that namespace could have different policies, restrictions. You can use network policies to restrict the network, for example, and then do their analysis there.
well, maybe we can take it offline. I just don't understand. I mean, somebody would come to debug the memory and understand if the device was causing some kind of an issue inside an operating system. But then I don't understand how do you do it on that saved memory that you just saved in the.
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
yeah, Vlad, why don't we can talk offline? I'm definitely interested in hearing your thoughts on this. I can message you after, and we can get together and talk about it if you like.
Actually, I wonder, this, if I could break in here, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This topic is quite large and involved. I wonder if we need a separate breakout session, as Pep had mentioned a few minutes ago, to really give this justice. We do unfortunately have a few more topics today, so I'd hope that we can wrap this up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I think from my perspective, I don't know how everyone else feels. I think like, from the API and the storage side and a bunch of other things, I think are like, it gives me at least enough that I feel comfortable like kind of going for and maybe writing a little bit of code on this. So, but if we want to have like, separate sessions, that's fine. I think I can do that from if we have any more large topics in here.
I think your best approach with this would be to begin proof of concepting what you have and your best understanding of what you have so far.
Yeah.
And that gives us something tangible to kind of talk about, and also kind of lets you go through the exercise of getting your hands on with what we have. And I think that might make things more clear as we like have further discussions as well, like what worked and what didn't work when you actually tried to do this in practice.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's kind of the direction I'm leaning now. I think at least now I don't see something that's like I at least have the direction that we want to go on a number of these things. So that's good. Yeah. Okay. I think, yeah, I think so. I have a few notes I'll make in here, and then yeah, maybe we can have some more breakouts and maybe further as I get a little further on this. So. Okay.
Yeah, let's definitely keep the conversation open. This is something that me and, well, we're going to be working on for the next major release. So, and some other CDI folks will be joining on as well. So,
okay. Yeah, so I'll do some sort of, like David mentioned, I can do some sort of POC. I don't know how long it'll take, but I'll work toward that, just given the general outline of what we discussed so far. And then, yeah, we can do like maybe some breakout sessions with some stakeholders here and kind of evaluate. And if we need like some larger forums, maybe I can come back here and we can discuss some, I don't know, if maybe change of direction or whatever it is that ends up happening.
okay.
All right, sounds good. All right, thank you. Stop sharing now.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other topics to raise in the agenda and notes section today, the more technical part of our day? Okay, moving on to the open floor. I sent an email yesterday, got a little bit of participation on the documents themselves, but no real discussion. The goal is to try and diversify the maintainers that we have, for the long-term health and relevance of the project. It's a very good idea to get more people involved at a fundamental level. So I put together a start, I guess, of the documented process that I would hope that we would land on, or something like it. So this is first off a call for comments. Please review the document. And first off, can everybody here see the document? Are you able to click on it? I see a few names and faces on the documented process link, but not sure if everybody's able. All right. Okay, and so just hoping that we can get some eyes on this and make sure it makes sense. But to emphasize, the goal here is to get more involvement and have other people as maintainers or reviewers or approvers of code. And any thoughts or comments on that?
It looks great. I think it certainly makes the process more transparent, especially for people that are not too familiar with KubeVirt or haven't contributed too much, but want to find out how to get on the board. So I really like it.
Thank you. I think that there is one more section, just a heads up, that I think we do need to add, and that's something about a tier above approvers, which is project owners or something, because I think that having a large committee of people doing the approval process might be just unwieldy. So there may be some changes to the overall structure, but this is kind of the intent of where we'd like to go. And past that, there are a few things that we are looking at in terms of areas where people can increase their participation if there's any interest. So moving on to the next topic there, we have about 133, I think I looked yesterday, issues, 135 on GitHub, and more are coming in all the time. It might make sense, the idea was floated at one point recently, of having a public bug scrub where we would go, or an issue scrub that is, where we would go through and look at those and triage them. Is that something people think in general is a good idea of doing? Is it worth our time?
I don't want to sound too positive today, but yes, again, with this, I think it makes, even though we don't pay enough attention to a lot of these issues that were reported or RFEs opened on KubeVirt, we are still getting new ones. So I think it's a good to get the community involved and maybe eventually be able to not only report issues, open RFEs, but contribute complicated features. So giving them the helping hand and making it clear, obvious that we are paying attention to these issues and having a channel to communicate with the people reporting them in case they have any question or want to clarify what they want to get with their RFEs. I think that all this would contribute for a healthier community and more parties involved.
Okay. And sort of tying into the next thing, would that be a good use of time in this meeting? Up until now, we haven't really had, a clear agenda, and we have to admit, in a lot of cases, we don't have an agenda created before the meeting begins. And I think that hurts us because without a clear direction or intent of what this meeting is for, we may not be getting as much attendance as we could because people just aren't interested. So, is a portion of this time, this hour that we have each week, useful as a bug scrub?
I was looking at the bug scrub recordings from one of the Kubernetes 6, and the first couple of them, they spent an hour just going through all the issues that weren't scrubbed before. So I think it has a potential of killing this goal, but if we dose it properly and say that we spend only 20 or 30 minutes bug scrubbing and the rest would be open floor or other agenda, then it may work. I'm not sure how many people would be able to join multiple times a week to participate in the community.
I like the idea of setting a time limit. So maybe 20 minutes for bug scrubs, and we would prioritize community members who have something to talk about there. So in the absence of somebody who specifically wants to talk about a specific bug, we would begin going to the list and see how far we can get through.
Yeah, and on these calls, on this call, we have quite a rich forum of people, like of maintainers and of the whole project. So it would be difficult to set up a second meeting and get the quorum of the same quality to do proper scrubbing and educating scrubbing. So I'd be down to start scrubbing on these calls.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Fantastic. And so I guess, part of this is we're looking to try and formally assign roles. We don't have to do it here in this meeting, but, these are things we're thinking about is we should have somebody able to help keep us on track or guide this, and in the spirit of what we're talking about, it shouldn't necessarily be one of the people, we're the ones that are familiar with this, but ideally, eventually we would have more involvement. So, we'll probably be looking for volunteers for, both the public issue scrub or, the building the agenda for this meeting.
Could we make it so, we say that there is a host for scrubbing, let's say for the next 4 weeks, and then they can give up and somebody else can volunteer if they want to, to make this available for everybody, and it's not that big of a commitment for whoever hosts it. Just a random idea, if it makes sense.
I'm fine with that. Is everybody okay? Like, would anybody be willing to do that?
I'm willing to start, and if I can give up on it after a couple of weeks.
Okay. Okay. Well, that'll work. Moderating the bug scrub. Okay, and yeah, another thing that we've noticed is we do have good presence on Slack, but it tends to be the same people answering questions. So if you're interested, or if you're able, if you could please spend a little time on the channel and just see if there's any way to contribute there, because it's some of us are quiet, and I am definitely guilty of that as well. And one other thought is we're moving towards KubeVirt V1 at some point, and just wondering if anybody would be interested in helping participate in that. Okay, no worries. We will probably follow up again, more on email in terms of, finding if there's a fit for these roles. And so with that, if there's no further thoughts, I will turn it over to Pep to talk about the KubeVirt Summit.
Yeah, just one thing about, quick clarification about KubeVirt V1. It's not about, someone responsible for delivering KubeVirt V1, but rather about, kind of leading the effort of coordinating and the roadmap, etc. Right? Anyway, KubeVirt Summit. So we are finally starting to plan what will become the first online event for KubeVirt, fully focused on KubeVirt. So some background on this. Typically, we used to have face-to-face meetings, piggybacking on major events like KubeCon, for example. This year everything has switched. All those major events have switched to a virtual format, so we cannot easily piggyback on a KubeVirt-centric small meetup. So what we're doing instead is a fully dedicated KubeVirt event. In the spirit of those meetups, the goal is to address both contributors and users. This virtual format provides a bit more flexibility, meaning that we will have like kind of 2 tracks, and we can run them both. And the only thing that we have more or less settled at the moment is a confirmation that we have a platform to run this, an online event platform to run this, and availability dates of that platform. So the proposal is to have this online event on the 9th and 10th of February, running for half day each day. So basically, the goal is to allow some overlap between American and European time zones. It's impossible to overlap the whole, world time zones, unfortunately, but at least this proposed time, we expect that will allow most interested people to join. So beyond that, we still don't have much more yet. And specifically, we don't have content. Basically, we are starting to plan, and this is a call for anyone interested in contributing in this planning effort, beyond contributing in the event itself. This call for content will also come soon. But if anyone wants to contribute on organizing this event, please reach out. Directly to me or through KubeVirt Dev. There will be follow-ups on that list about this topic as well. That's what I wanted to mention. Any comments, questions, excitement?
Yeah, well, this is awesome. Is there, and maybe I missed it, do we have a formal call for proposals process or a committee that's going to be doing the acceptance of talks?
So no, we don't, and that's part of the preparation. So we don't even know if we want to run a formal call for proposals. That's a bit open, open for discussion, in the sense that a formal call for proposals involves getting together, assembling a committee to decide and opening a fixed period for the whole formal process of a CFP. Due to KubeVirt is a relatively big project, but it's also relatively small enough, let's say, that we believe we can do without a formal CFP. But that's just the initial thought. Again, if anyone believes we must run through a formal CFP, basically if we had too much content, or if the proposals were not clear enough, etc., we might have to define one process. Definitely we need to define a process anyway in case we exceed capacity, for example, for proposal selection. But so far we don't have a formal CFP defined. So it's welcome as well.
Okay, great. Any questions or comments? Okay, well, with 2 minutes to spare, are there any other topics that we need to raise today? Okay, well, fantastic. And I think we're rolling up on the holiday season, so we might have light attendance next week. Now that I mention it, do we want to hold I guess next week is still fine, but probably the week after we might want to consider not having a meeting. Not sure.
Definitely not the week after. I think even next week's going to be a little light, I would imagine. Actually, really light. We'll see. So for this summit, like the next announcements and things like that, would it make sense for us to go ahead and postpone making any, I mean, sure, announce it now, but as far as like coming up with the process for receiving presentations and things like that, should we wait until after the new year to do that? Or what's people's thoughts about the timing of how we announce
the problem
this?
is timing because, well, the currently available dates, well, February is getting close. If we wait until January before we start the process of requesting, I don't know. I wouldn't delay it personally.
My concern is I'm thinking if there's any sort of feedback that we need to be providing people who are submitting proposals or anything like that,
Right.
Availability is going to be difficult until beginning of the year for a lot of us. That's something we can take offline. It was just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends on how we take in proposals and how we want to proceed with like getting presentations scheduled and everything.
Yeah, well, let's continue offline, but I believe we should start, let's say not wait 3 weeks before opening up for proposals.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we can send a reminder at the beginning of the year as well.
Yeah.
As we get closer. Okay.
Okay, well, I believe that would be a full agenda today. So without further ado, thanks everybody and see you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 Thanks, bye.
Thank you.